Wow, I hope you guys love that sound. Folks, welcome to Prompt Engineering with OpenAI and learning with us. A lot of things. I'm Pablo Lopes, cloud advocate in dotnet and a little bit of AI, and I'm here with Jordan. I don't know where to point. I always like to do this when I never know what I'm pointing to. Hello, Jordan!
Hey, Pablo, always great to see you. Hey, everybody, how's it going? I'm ready.
Exactly. So I will joke a little bit with the person that is coordinating this live stream. That is, I say something when you pull the deck up. Pull the deck up. Yeah, let's go. I said something. So welcome to this lesson on prompt engineering with Azure OpenAI. So before we go, take the challenge, folks. So we have like this amazing Gen AI challenge playlist. So you can watch all the live streams. I have so much content for you. And you have here this amazing QR code that you can scan and take a look. Complete the challenge, of course. Take this challenge of us, get the assessment, and have fun learning generative AI. I know some folks from here came from .NET, focus on AI. So we're gonna use a little bit of .NET here as well. But honestly, it's open for everyone. If you want to do with Python, .NET, this will be an incredible way to learn quickly and have some comments with professionals at Microsoft. So take a look here and let us know what you think. So this is the second of a five-part series, which is build now your prompt engineering. Then you're gonna take a look on generating coded images with Azure OpenAI, implement the ROG with the Azure OpenAI service, and then the fundamentals of responsible generative AI. All of those are coming next week. So, but get ready; those are coming very, very soon.
Yeah, these are really exciting. At the end of all these, if you follow along with the, because we're walking you through the material in the like a learning lab series, and at the end you also get a certification, kind of a little badge that pops up to say that you've gone through this. That's always fun to go through. There's a URL you can go to follow along in the assessment. So
Yeah,
we'll
I'm
walk you
pointing.
through the prompt engineering part today.
I'm probably pointing to Jordan, but if I point down here, other than Jordan,
No,
if
that
you
way.
go, yeah, exactly, ssaka.ms slash GenAI dash challenge dash assessment. So this is the way to go and take a look. We have so much content for you. But now we're gonna start very quickly trying to understand prompt engineering, right? I believe there's a lot of talk on what prompt engineering is, it isn't, and the techniques. It's a very comprehensive topic. Only by itself, generative AI is big, but I believe the best way to describe prompt engineering is the process to design and optimize prompts to better utilize AI models. So you basically get this prompt, right? You know when you write something like write a poem about Pablo hosting the generative AI challenge with Jordan. This is a prompt, right? This is a way that I'm asking for something. But here's the thing: you there's so many ways to request the same thing. It's like in engineering, right? You have so many ways to solve something. And it's the same for generative AI. You can ask in so many different ways that fun it's incredible that you can have different even results. Like some results doesn't give don't you get the results. Like if I write this directly, a lot of things are missing here. What are the style of the poem on what is the length of the poem, what should I refer, do you want any specific way to write it, etc. So you see that we have so many ways to describe what we want, how to get the results that you're looking towards, that you can actually do that with prompt engineering. There you go. So we are actually going to follow you with a Microsoft Learn lesson very soon, but it's basically you already have like the seed of a thought here to have some ways to implement and understand how we do this. So prompt engineering, of course, is very important, but a lot of things influence in how it like generates the next parts with the prompt itself. So we have here the temperature, which is basically the high temperatures, the model. I really like to talk like it's mathematics. So The temperature is I not, don't worry, I'm not gonna throw you like calculus level things or statistics or stochastic statistics that we actually look towards that, but the temperature is really funny because it allows like more creative returning output. But explain this more deeply is more related to it allows even tokens that has less probability to be picked should be. So imagine that I'm trying to complete the next sentence, right? You folks probably know how generative AI works. If you don't, I don't like some people like Chuck says autocomplete fancy. I don't like that that affirmation. But imagine that I'm trying to go to my next word. So we have like multiple options, and it usually picks the most probable one. But the good part is that you can tweak this temperature to have like different ways that they can choose on which word are gonna go next. So that's the temperature, and that's top being fact. Temperature will result more in the higher values. So basically, the words can have more values, and then it can go crazier, and the probability will increase the potential tokens that can pick. So that's the cool part. You can actually tweak even without like touching your keyboard or writing new sentences for it. You can adjust one at a time, always fine tune. Be careful. Don't try to raise the temperature top P at the same time because this is a way to get really messy. Jordan, do you have anything to say about those parameters?
No, I think the main thing when you're working with prompt engineering is thinking of the well, there's also like garbage in, garbage out. So a poor
Yeah.
queries in, you might get poor results out. So it's all about playing around with the right combination of enough details in the instructions and your prompt on the way in. And you're playing with these dials that you're adjusting here on the creativity and like how many of the tokens to consider. So it's a little bit of experimentation going around trying to get to those. So I would say definitely as you go through, change one of those at a time, see what the results are like. Okay, now I might improve creativity a little bit and change the temperature up a bit, see what the responses are like, and kind of go about it in that methodical sort of approach.
Yeah, man. That's I believe that the beauty of it. So here we're gonna be very quick because we're gonna go through the lessons still. This is not the full presentation, it's just for you having already an idea what we're gonna see. So the basic parts are to provide clear instructions. Let's be descriptive, be clear when you try to get what the responsive model you want to. Format the instructions. The format matters. The models have very big recency bias. That's true. So I like just that it written here to repeat instructions. We can try to repeat instructions, but you have so many ways to format it. I like that it says here section markers, but you can provide a lot of like the primary supporting grounding content. I believe that's the key. Format instructions are really important, but this the content itself, how you ground it, how you use it in primary, how you're supporting it are key to deliver what you need to have great accuracy on what you're writing and get towards your new, bigger, nicer response. And the cues. The cues are always great leading words, trying to categorize new information. That's key for everyone to understand how we are getting, how the model understands what it needs to do. Because remember, it's trying to get next token. So you have to give sometimes cues, or sometimes you have to give like, feel this, feel that. It's very cool to see how it tries to format itself when you give some parts of content that it can like go forward with it. Okay, after this, I believe we can go to Microsoft Learn because then we're gonna have like an improving accuracy, etc. Of course, that's important, but I believe in Learn we have better part on that. So let's go to Microsoft Learn.
Okay.
Let's
here I've
go,
gone.
Jordan, to the lessons.
Yeah. So I've gone here. I'm on the exercise step. If we go back a moment on what this assessment will take you through, there's a series of steps that kind of cover what we just went over in more depth, talking about some concepts about the formatting, things like grounding, which is like providing data that grounds the query in a little more truth, a little more information, extra stuff you add into the query. So it's going to walk you through details of what that means. So
Mhm.
for example, and so I'm going to focus a chunk of the time here on the going through the steps in the lab will just give us practical experience playing with those elements that are called out in the assessment. But if we walk through here for you to see what the details are that's in this, we have a description around the prompt engineering, exactly like you were just talking about, Pablo. And
Mhm.
then there's some discussion in here about your setup with Azure OpenAI. So the lab and everything's going to work with Azure OpenAI, but these same concepts apply if you're working with OpenAI and models directly. If you're working with AI prompting in general, prompt engineering, pretty much all the content in this is applicable to how you would work with prompts with all sorts of different models. So that's really good to keep in mind. This is information you can use and apply across your AI journey, whatever you're exploring. So they give some details in here. For example, there's a few ways you can work with models around chat completions, which we're using. This is more of a chat interaction of discussion with an AI model, but there's also just straight up completions that it's worth noting. This is another form of endpoint with Azure, with OpenAI around. It's like you're just completing text instead of a back and forth chat.
Yeah.
Um, so let me go
One
back to
thing.
the next one here on.
Mhm.
So that was sort of what we just covered in the first part.
Exactly.
And
And
then
you can
there's,
see right here that we're
oh, go ahead.
gonna show you some prompts and responses as well now. By the way, folks, if you have any doubts and questions, comment in the chat. We're gonna love to talk with you about how to do it effectively on prompt engineering with Azure OpenAI service. So go for it, Jordan. But I needed to like put this ask us, you know.
Always a good idea. Yeah. So for example, basic prompt of, you know, just a straightforward, clear instructions, product description for a new water bottle, and you get a response. And then we get to an example of one that's even more specific, more clear. Write a description for a new water bottle. And now you're getting into the details, like what that is 100% recycled, include some details. It comes in natural colors, no dyes. So you can see here they're expanding, being more crisp about what we want. And in our response, then we get a more accurate description that might be closer to what we actually want to have in here. It's calling out the fact the material is 100% recycled. No dyes were used, talks about the coloring, and it expands around that. So this is an example of providing some more clarity, more detail in the prompt. You know, really good prompt in, really specific. You get a better response out that might be closer to what you want to use.
Yeah, and you can see how much like it differs between one and another. You can see how it's trying to focus, and that's why it's important to always add details. Of course, don't spam with details. Remember context window, but it is like key for us to take care on that as well.
Well, that might be a good one to mention. I don't know that they talk about it as much in this lab. You mentioned context window there, Pablo. If you want to add just a little detail on what that means.
Of course, my man. I'm always happy to help folks. So this was more important on the time of GPT 3.5, right? I think you remember that. So, folks, before what we had on GPT 4.0, which was now available for everyone to use, etc., we had like GPT 3.5. That was the main version. And what a context window is basically you know that a computer has RAM, right? It has a way to store your information that can be easily accessible and you can like run it quickly. So I like to think that some people don't like this analogy too much, but I think that context window is really close to like the capacity of RAM that you have on your computer. But for your model, for instance, and we had like 4,096 tokens. So it meant is everything that you have on this space, even the responses of the chatbot. So imagine that you have like, then you're gonna write it. It's going to occupy something on the model itself. It's going to have all those, nodes inside, and in the nodes you're gonna have a lot of info. So if you write too much, if basically you talk with the bot too much, what happens is it doesn't have any space anymore. It needs to get rid of things. So then it starts to lose context. And that's what happened a lot of GPT 3.5, even GPT 3, if you experiment with that as well. I did some experimentations. I didn't work at Microsoft at the time, but bibs and bobs here and there with GPT 3. So these are some fun things that we had a lot with, GPTs and etc. But you see how important it is. Right now, it's not that important because if you break the token limit on 4.440, congrats, you are incredible, my man. But I don't think if you need that. Okay, let's go, Jordan. Sorry for our detour.
Hey, no, I think it's nice to have those extra steps in myself.
Yeah.
So you also mentioned, Pablo, around formatting. So this section here gives an example of the idea of
Let's
formatting
go.
using section dividers. So they use, a couple formats here we can see.
Mm-hmm.
And so that can just be a way to help kind of give a little more clarity to the model about like where there's a difference in instructions and content. It's also nice for us as we write more complex prompts to have, those breakdowns of sections sometimes. Then we get into that topic of primary, supporting, and grounding content. So we'll actually go through this in the lab steps in a moment. Just to, I like to be a hands-on learner. It's kind of nice to run these and see and play with the prompts. But basically, you can look at here an example of a prompt where we've got first the primary content, and then the body of the prompt or the end of the prompt is basically saying summarize that primary content, identify 3 takeaways. So there's an example of primary content that's working with. This is a way we're giving it a thing to work upon. You notice the section dividers are kind of a nice way to separate content from direction. Then we go further to some supporting content. So this gives an example of, here's our primary content. A full email might go here. And then you could say that topics I'm interested in are specifics here of AI, webinar date, submission deadlines. This is the supporting content. This is a little extra direction, like here's things I want to know. And then we say, okay, now extract the key points from the email above, put them in a bulleted list. And the response we get out will consider both the full email, the things you're interested in, that supporting content, and then use that to inform the bullets and kind of what gets pulled together. Anything you'd add on those two, Pablo?
Honestly, because you say that you are a hands-on learner, you're such an expert, Jordan. I will not add anything. But seriously, I always try to ground your content in some way. When I say ground, is not only add info, but let's think of way to separate your content. If you copy paste a bunch of text and it's all together, it becomes a mess. Garbage in, garbage out, right? So always be careful on the way that you are describing your prompt and how are you separating it. I always like to say that you're passing a task as a markdown info. Yeah, and fun fact, even bold works. Bold when you like asterisk asterisk word asterisk asterisk doesn't say that it works when you go handle it. Sometimes it do, depending on the handler that you're using. But the system understands that bold means something important. So you can actually think of I'm passing a task as a markdown file. That's a thing sometimes I use, but that's not official. Please don't use it as official. But that's a thing I personally use to have some fun.
Excellent. I think rounding out this section, we talked a little on, like you said, grounding data. This one here is an example of if you were to send a query to, or a prompt to a model without any grounding data and said, where and when did the field of AI start? It's going to give you an answer off of what it was trained upon. But if you want to get more specific or better ground the response in a more truthful answer or something you trust more, this is where grounding content comes in. So for example, in the prompt, you could actually put the text of they're giving an example of an unpublished paper on the history of AI. If you include that in your prompt, and then you have the question, where and when did the field of AI start? It will actually consider the content you provided as a source of truth, if you will, for that answer, and can get you to a more accurate response, or a response is closer to the what you consider accurate and relevant for your application. So, for example, you can also go on as a little tip in writing these prompts and include things like don't include only content from this grounded data, and you can direct the prompt to even say don't add extra info from what you were trained on, purely respond based on the data in this prompt. There's different techniques you can use around it. So grounding data is really important. One that you'll learn more about over time.
Yeah.
And I think finally the last one here is one of the easier pieces of cues. In this case, for example, you're giving a cue, a hint to the model about what to do next. So this is sort of like thinking of autocomplete in a text message. So this says write a join query, and it gives some details about, what kind of a query I want. And then by starting with the word select, it's more likely the model is then going to pick response tokens that are going to be closer to like a select statement in SQL, for example, from, this is the terminology you used. Select is a common thing out there that starts off queries. And so you're hinting it that I want a SQL query next. Or if you say summarize the reviews above, and then you give it a hint, most common complaints, colon, and a dash, it's going to look more similar to a bullet list because that hyphen's there.
Yeah.
And so the responses you get back will be very likely it's going to be bullet list or a hyphenated list of items.
A good tip as well on that. Remember that we said that it's trying to go for next token. So it knows hyphen. Gives word. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
But I know that's a hyphen before. Okay, it means list. Goes next. You see, that's a cool part of giving a cue because sometimes you don't even need to say, I want this like blah 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 list. Just like start and let it go. It already knows the way to autocomplete it and go forward or no during the next part of the queue. So that's a pretty incredible way that I really like on to write effective prompts.
Yeah, exactly. Incidentally, that a kind of a SQL prompt example was one of my first aha moments learning with the AI models when it generated a SQL query based off of some inputs and giving an example schema to follow. I was like, whoa, that was one of those that kind of threw me a little more than some of the other examples out there. Okay, I digress a little. I think so. We're getting close to the 30-minute mark, so I might move over toward the lab that's going to put this stuff in practice. But let's look over this next.
We yap so much, man.
What was that?
We are yapping so much.
You just can't help it. It's so it's fun.
It's cool. It's cool.
So let's see here. On this, we're getting some examples of different ways of guiding. So this section is more about more context, improving that accuracy. So we gave an example of more context around grounded data and supporting data that helped improve the output. Now this section is talking over some other forms of improving the structure of the output. So an example of giving a direction here, write a table in Markdown. And so now we've got a Markdown table that is output. Or put two fictional characters into JSON of the following format, providing a schema. And I think there's got to be maybe a comma in there if I'm nitpicking format a little, but you get the idea that the output then is going to include a response that says, oh, and here's an example of some, JSON format in this. So it's filled in the blanks of what would roughly fit that schema. And then as you get into, so far we've just been putting prompts and getting responses. Now you can break this down into additional ways of providing instructions to the model. So there's a system message that can be passed in. It's helpful to kind of guide the system, the model. I think of it in a way of sort of telling the model, like, this is your personality, what you are. Like they say here, it could include tone, personality, topics that should not include, or specifics like formatting. So this can be context that for any response, this is the way you act. So they give some examples here of, I want you to act like a command line terminal and respond to commands exactly as cmd.exe would in one unique code block, nothing else. Another one of translating from English to Spanish. Don't respond to anything I say or ask only translate between the languages. And so these are giving very specific instructions that will guide any interaction back and forth with the model. And here's an example in C# of this is using the Azure OpenAI SDK. This will be very similar if you use the OpenAI SDK as well that comes from OpenAI for C#. And this gives an example of setting up a system message as well as passing in a user message. So this is telling the model that you're a casual, helpful assistant, and you're going to talk like an American old Western film character. And so when the user asks, can you direct me to the library? The agent's going to respond with, well, howdy there, stranger, the library, huh? Y'all just head down the main road till you hit the town square, that kind of a thing. It'd be fun if it's put in the accent, but we're not there yet. So.
Yeah.
What were you going to add, Pablo?
The only thing I want to say is that imagine as a system is the system itself, right? It's always important, like, oh, I don't know if you're gonna have like in the responsible AI part that the system is really important in how it controls behavior on the answers on that. So always take care on your system messages, and then always like to try to break it a little to see if it is robust enough. But other than that, I believe that's it.
Good point. Yep. Let's see the next one around conversation history. So this definitely, as you go back and forth in chat models, having the let me make sure I'm talking to this right. Okay, yes. So conversation history, you can also, the API, the SDKs you'll work with will often hide this concept a bit, but it can maintain the concept of the history of a chat. And this helps later responses be more relevant toward past responses that it provided. They like to use the term, or we use the term in here around recency bias. The prompts to the responses from the LLM are biased toward what it most recently saw, basically the first the prompt you sent in. So the SDKs, different patterns are out there for maintaining chat history so that it has an idea with a later response, what was asked in the past, how did I respond, and can build upon those responses. And then we get into a few concepts here around better guiding your prompt. So few shot learning. What we've done so far on some of these is, actually, here's I'll just walk through their exact step by step. So in this case here, we're sending a prompt. This is the prompt that will go to the model, and it's providing examples of past conversations. So this will help that when it responds, it's going to respond in a way that's in a similar pattern to what you gave examples of. So few shot learning is about, you have zero shot, which is I send a prompt to the LLM with no extra context, and it gives me back a response. It does its best. Few shot learning, you give it some examples of ways you want it to respond, and then it will use those hints as, okay, I've got a few examples, and so it gives it a hint toward how to respond later. And so this shows you in code as well the way we could do that. This is an example of building up a series of those exacts. The system message, a user message, assistant would be a response that came back. What the user said, response that came back and forth, and then we send the next user message. And then now the response we get back from the model will very likely be positive or negative because that's the pattern established in this series of prompts.
Yep.
And then doing our time check, I think these next two here I won't dive in as deep, but basically they're showing you some more details of working with the model to break down tasks and break down more complex tasks.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. So you can.
And I don't really dive in that on the lab, so I won't go into that as much. I don't know if you want to add anything in here around chain of thought.
The only thing you need to imagine is that imagine of saying, "Oh, I want a full website." You just break it into like Kanban, right? Do the back end, do the front end, do the database. You are breaking the tasks. So like, oh, do a website. How can I do a website? Break the task, go and go into construct it until it becomes a full website. This is the same principle here. We're basically changing between like very specific hard tasks into like usable breakable ones. Then you can like go and construct the approach going there. Yeah, I believe that's it for chain of thought. Even though it's simple explanation, that's no a quick way to do it.
Yep. Sounds great. Yep. Tell the model here's a step-by-step approach for answering a question. And then this is
Exactly.
a few shot example of using that approach. Here's one way I would respond to a prompt. And then this gives enough hints to the model to, when it responds, break down the way it came to a conclusion, if you will, and kind of think through that. So, okay, let's see. We have now. Okay, so now we're on to this last part here is the lab you walk through. So we'll take you through this here.
Let's go.
So basically, the thing to know with these is what you're going to do when you go into the lab and you'll click Launch Lab, and it's going to set up a virtual environment for you, a VM. I've already done that work too. No.
Oh no. Okay,
It's
it's
okay.
not the end. It's not the end of the world because we still have.
Yeah, no, we're fine. I'll let this run. This will take a moment. But the first part I was going to do back in my browser because of where I have my Azure OpenAI
Yeah.
subscription set up, so it's no problem. But so you'll click the button, you'll get exactly what I'm getting here. I'm not hiding anything. It's setting up a lab environment that you'll be able to use.
Yeah. So
And
we had already that open to you already,
uh-oh.
so we could actually. Oh, what happened?
You know, the environment I was demoing actually just, let me make sure I bring up my machine again real quick.
Okay,
Okay.
did my camera just turn off?
Oh no,
What?
everything's fine down there. Yeah, your
What is
pause.
happening? Okay, that's incredible. The good part is that Jordan, I have a second camera. Can you believe that? Because I know this can happen.
Well done. Okay, I think my screen's back. If our production crew wants to put that back up on the screen. Thank you. So my VM is still getting set up, but what I've done here is in the first part of the lab, so the machine's going to come up, it'll direct you to log in and then follow some steps to set up your model that we're going to work with in Azure OpenAI. So in the yesterday, Matt and Bruno did the first part of the series that talked through setting up Azure OpenAI. So I'm not going to go through those details. But what I've done here is I've got an environment set up with Azure OpenAI. I've set up a model or a deployment that's using GPT-3.5 Turbo 16K. This is what's directed in the lab that we're going through here. And so let me zoom this in a little for everybody.
Oh, okay. Reload that.
It's cracking me up. Okay, we'll get back there.
There you go.
Okay, so we're back in this screen here. And what we're going to do is we're going to walk through, in the lab, it's going to walk you through some examples of working with prompts. So our first one here, I'll just paste in. And what we're doing in this prompt, if I click send, because it's probably easier to see it. I'm using the chat playground here in Azure OpenAI Studio just to play with prompts. And pardon some formatting maybe from the way I pasted it, but the prompt was, what kind of article is this? And then we provide the supporting content that describes the article. And the response I got back is, this article is a news article. Now, we're going to take and change our system message. So for right now, the system message purely instructed the model that you're just an AI assistant that helps people find information. Now, we're going to update it to say, you're a news aggregator that categorizes news articles. I'll apply my changes. And we'll paste back in the last article that we used. So here's the same prompt. What kind of article is this? There's the body of the article. And when I hit send, now we'll get back a different response. this article can be categorized as a natural disaster or environment article. So you see how we change the behavior by changing the system prompt. Okay, so for the next step, we're going to add some of the few-shot learning. We're going to add some examples. So we're going to provide examples of an interaction. So first up, the user may have asked, what kind of article is this? And it's an article about baseball. And the assistant responds saying, sports. And let's add another example here of, say the user then asked the model, what kind of article is this now? And this is joyous moments at the Oscars. The Oscars this past week were quite something. And it is an article about the Oscars. And the assistant would have responded with, about entertainment. So now we've got some examples. We're going to apply these changes. Sorry, maybe the zoom levels make it a little tricky, but there we go. I'm going to apply those changes. And we'll
Your chat.
Current chat history. And let's go ahead and not change anything up. So now I'm going to post the same kind of message we did above. So I take a step back. I have same system message. Now we've added in examples, and I'm going to post the same prompt from before. What kind of article is this? And it's one about keep hitting the wrong keyboard shortcut. This is about drought likely in California. And so when we hit enter, now the response is purely environment. So, for example, same prompt that before gave us the answer. This article can be categorized as natural disasters or environment. Now, with those few shot examples, it just says it's about environment.
Yeah. And that's what's pretty incredible about it, is that we can just give small samples and then it can do what we talk about. And remember, this can be used for trying to convert this to JSON, try to convert objects, try to even like programming languages. I heard that it's very useful. So amazing things you can do with only the chat playground.
Yeah, it's nice. I like this playground's a nice way to explore and experiment a bit with, just playing around, learning with prompts without having to do much, set up a lot of other pieces. You can kind of just play around. So the one other example they'll walk you through here is now about, let's see. So here's an example of some simple chain of thought, like create a list of animals, create a list of whimsical names for those animals, and then combine them randomly into a list of 25 animal and name pairs. And see what this responds with. I reset us to the default system message. So this is clean space. And now you can see we've got a large list of responses back. Like a name for a bear could be Noodle. And a name for a panda could be Snugglepuff. There's a fun one. Mm-hmm. Let's say we want to figure out the code for this. So now we're going to change the system message. The lab starts. So I'm a .NET person. I work on the .NET team. The lab starts off with Python code, but I'm going to change this to C# code. And now we're going to run the same prompt. We've said, okay, now you are a coding assistant helping write C# code. And we're going to paste in the exact same chain of thought, as in, sorry, there we go. Create a list of animals, create a list of whimsical names for those animals, combine them randomly into a list of 25 pairs. Now when we run this, what I'm going to get back is very different. You'll see actual code being shown. Hey, it even went into dark mode. And so now you'll see back a response that says, here's an example to accomplish this. And we've got a basic console application. Here's a list of animals. Here's a list of, it looks like some fun names. And now this will go through and generate the pairs of these names. And so it does a very simple run through, and it takes from one randomly randomly picks an item from the list of animals, randomly picks a name, pairs them together, and then that's going to get output to the console. And it even gives you a little description of what's going on in that code like I just did. So there's the first part of the lab. That is our walkthrough of playing with prompts.
Yeah, but we had so much fun with prompts. Now we're gonna do some coding, my friends.
Yeah, so now this steps into an example walking through how you would run this in code. What was that?
Yeah,
Pablo?
professional code. We're
Mhm.
gonna be so professional. Folks, by the way, any questions that you may have, please talk with us in the comment section as well. So just a small reminder, while Jordan setups our incredible Visual Studio Code, and we're gonna use .NET for this. So this will be our .NET sample that we're gonna show you folks how to use. Because we know that I have a lot of samples in Python, and if you want to use Python, the lab as well includes some samples in Python as well. So if you want to like play with it, be our guest. But we are .NET, so we're gonna do .NET.
So what I've done here, so the instructions when you use the lab, it's going to show you on the right step by step what to go through, and here's details on log in with the password. The lab walkthrough first, setting up Azure OpenAI. So we talked about that, was covered in a video from yesterday, and what I've done is I set up a model. So the next step is deploy a model, and here I set up the one we just worked with, which was GPT 3.5 Turbo 16K, and there's some defaults it recommends you use. And then it walked me through the steps we just did. Here's everything I went through in the chat playground. I'd zoom in the text on the right, but really for this video today, you don't need to see the content. We're just walking through it, but that's to give you an idea of what's happened. And now we're at the point of how you would pull this into code in VS Code or Visual Studio Code. So there is a repo that accompanies the lab. I'm going to copy that. And we're going to use Visual Studio Code to clone it in. Since my environment did get reset, I will take a moment and have to stop screen sharing in a second to set up my secrets, but we don't have to do that yet.
Wow, so secret, man.
Yeah, I had it set up in advance, but then the last lab VM got recycled. It happens.
Exactly. So, folks, here's the thing. The lab supports the assessment that you're going to take to get the credential as well. So that's why we are doing all this through here as well. But it will be very cool for us to take a look and see how you can set up everything on the cloud with, an incredible scalable platform. There you go. You can already see that we have like the lab files.
And what we're doing now in this environment.
C#.
Okay. So I'm picking the C# version of this because this series of videos, I think we kicked off from Focus on AI. So, and I'm a .NET person, so we'll focus on the C#. But like you were saying, there's also the Python version here.
Mm-hmm.
And our first step is setting up actually, this is kind of handy with the VM we're using. So I've opened a terminal to the folder, and this app has a nice way to type the text in for me. So I'll do that. Rendered a little weird, but basically this should be adding the Azure OpenAI SDK. Formatting is a little weird there. There we go. Little glitch in the terminal formatting, but basically what's doing is we're adding the Azure.ai.openai package from NuGet, and this is the package you use to interact. This is the SDK for interacting with Azure OpenAI. And then this is where I'll pause my screen for a second. But the next thing I'll do here will, from Azure OpenAI, you will have an endpoint. There we go. A key and a deployment name that will be pasted in here. So for example, I'll be going back and, name's not on my screen, but I'll go fix this up real quick. But I'm going to go put these details in real fast. I think we've got a moment for me to do that. So let me do that part. Always guard your secrets closely, my friends. And so what the guide will walk you through this as well, but what I'm doing that you can't see is in the Azure OpenAI Studio, you can go to this deployment, and we'll be copying the deployment name, which in this case I used the same name as our model GPT-3.5 Turbo 16K. And then I'll also be copying an endpoint URL that is used by the SDK to talk to the service. And then there will be a secret key that I'm just going to include in that sample file. So on my end, I've done that part, and we'll share again.
Share, Jordan. People,
Sharing.
they yield for they are praying for to see more .NET. There you go.
Okay. So with this lab now, what they'll have us do is we're going to be modifying this file, and we're going to be adding in references to the package I just used in the code that we'll go through to run some prompts. So I'm just going to follow the steps of using the Azure OpenAI SDK package. And this gives them really nice details of, go to this comment and paste this code. So that's exactly what I'm doing here is that configure the OpenAI client, it says. So you'll see here in code, it grabbed the endpoint. I'll go big screen here. You see the code they provide us already has some scaffolding of, this will come back in a second, getting the endpoint key and deployment name to use. Then there's some fun little console setup. And here's where we're putting in the placeholder code. So this will use those details from above and actually set up a new OpenAI client object we'll work with. And let's see, did they have me do anything other than just start to run this right away?
There we go.
Okay. Then there's this detail. Let's try this out because this is a large chunk of text to copy. Sometimes this works pretty nice in the lab, the little text typing button, it typed it in for me.
Yeah, I know.
There we go. So what this does is they're now setting up options that will be passed to the SDK that include the system message and the user message. And here's where temperature was configured. So floating point number 0.7, like Pablo, you said earlier, the higher the number, the more creative. So 0.7 going up to 1.0. This will get a bit creative.
Yeah, that would be so much creative, man.
And then limiting some of the tokens we work with for what we send and what we receive back.
Wow.
I think for system message and user message, I think there's a default that was provided. Okay, I think it's actually going to prompt us when we run the app, so we won't worry about that. The important part is there's going to be the call that gets configured with a system message and a user message.
Yeah.
And then we run the application. So I'm going to zoom us back out a little bit here. This text size is like huge on my screen.
Let's run some code.
Okay, so now we're set. I believe we just run the project was the next step. Oh, wait. I got ahead of myself. In the folder of your preferred language, open system.txt. For each of the interactions, you'll enter the system message. There was the missing detail. So I needed to be putting in some message. By default, there wasn't anything here. So let's fix that up.
Mm-hmm.
For first interaction, enter the following. You are an AI assistant. What happened with my error, though?
Let me see.
Chat completions could not be found.
Then
I'll take one moment to look, but since we're getting near the end, I might not. I will definitely not jump into like deep troubleshooting, just because we need to everybody's time. We don't want to take too long, but you might get the general idea of what's going on in here. Because I think you saw earlier, Pablo, when we took a look at this, there's some errors. We didn't know where they were coming from in the sample, so I might need to.
I think did your dotnet add the Azure OpenAI thing?
Yeah, we added that one to the project. C# 03 prompt engineering is what we're in. Response check. So here's the line that it's saying is errand. Response chat completion.
Yep.
Yeah.
But,
should all be added.
Anything you can, folks, always verify if you installed your library for things, because usually sometimes what this happens is .NET add did not add. So always say take a look on that as well.
Yeah, let's give that another go. Maybe something happened on that one, huh?
But while we talk, we are very close to closing this. Jordan, while you are adding again our incredible .NET on that package, did you have anything to say to all of you, or no, our incredible live stream viewers here?
Yeah, so basically, I mean, even if we can't get this running, as you go through the assessment, this lab is part of going through the whole thing. And when you are done going through the steps of the lab, I'm sure you won't have errors like I ran into.
Yeah.
Then I'm going to do this live right now because I already did the assessment. So there'll be a prompt. It takes you to a knowledge check to see, as you went through everything, how well do you understand it. And when you're all done, you get this nice complete the module, and there we go. I've got my next achievement. So
exactly.
So for all of you following along at home, if you want to go through this full series, and I think this is a really great course, if you will, on that we're covering here. I think this will show us the full list of videos, but basically stay with us. We did one video yesterday in this series. If we want to put up the URL again for the where to follow along, we got the other sessions you mentioned, Pablo, to keep going on. We did prompt engineering, and there's more to come to follow along the whole series.
We are gonna have already on the 26th more sessions. We're gonna go. The next one will be generate code and images with Azure OpenAI. So stay tuned for that. The same time at the same where you can find us. So take the challenge and I don't know if credentialite is like the most fluent way to say that, but hey, why not? So get your credentials, watch more live streams, complete the challenge, and take the assessment with us. So scan a QR code to know more details and get ready for more Generative AI with Microsoft. Folks, that's it. Thank you so much for being with us.
Yeah, thanks so much for hosting, Pablo. Always a pleasure to hang out with you for a while.
My pleasure is all mine. And that's it. Team, I'm ready to go. Thank you.